"You're not really mine, so I forgot to cross you out of the will," Dad announced at his 65th. Everyone laughed until I tore up his $4 million gift in front of him. The room laughed before I even set my purse down. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the toast. Not the 60 faces turned toward me like I was the punchline they'd been waiting all night to hear. The laughter. It came fast, easy, like they'd rehearsed it. Like some part of them had been waiting for Raymond to finally say the quiet part out loud, and now that he had, they could all exhale together. I was standing by the dessert table with a plate of pistachio cake I hadn't touched. My father, I still called him that, out of habit, out of some stubborn hope I hadn't managed to kill, was holding a champagne flute up near the head table. 65 years old, tuxedo jacket a size too tight across the shoulders, grinning at the room like a man accepting an award. "I'd be remiss," he said, "if I didn't say a word about Sophie." My stomach dropped before he even finished the sentence. 18 years of folding chairs will teach you to read a room a half second before it turns. "We were redoing the will," he said, and paused for effect. Actually paused, savoring it, and I had to think about whether Sophie was even in it. "No hard feelings, sweetheart," he winked. "You're not really mine. I just forgot to cross you out." The laugh that followed wasn't cruel exactly. It was worse than cruel. It was comfortable. A woman near the window, Diane's book club friend, I think, said, "Oh, that's so Raymond," like he'd told a joke about golf. I had a folded sheet of paper in my purse. Notarized that morning at 8:47 a.m., recorded with Kessler County at 9:03. I hadn't planned to use it that night. I'd planned to give it to him quietly, privately, the way I'd given him everything for 18 years, hoping, one more time, that this gift would be the one that finally made me family instead of a rescue project with good table manners. Instead, I stood up, picked up my folding chair from its spot by the kitchen door, and walked it to the wall. The room went quiet in a way that felt almost physical, like all the air had been pulled out of it at once. I want to tell you what led me there, because the party wasn't the story. The party was just the moment the story became visible to everyone else. I'd been living it for 34 years. I was 5 years old when Diane Albright decided to save me. That's how she always told it, at church functions and Christmas cards, and once, unbearably, at my own college graduation reception. We saved her. Not adopted, saved. Like I was a stray she'd found under a porch, which, in fairness, wasn't far from the truth. I'd been in and out of 3 foster placements in Kessler County before Diane and Raymond Albright signed the paperwork that made me theirs on paper, if never in practice. For the first 4 years, I was the miracle. Diane brought me to every ladies' luncheon like a trophy. "This is Sophie. We rescued her." I have photographs from that era. Actual photographs, the kind you print at a Walgreens kiosk, of me in matching outfits with Diane, her hand on my shoulder, both of us smiling at a camera that had no idea what was coming. Then Spencer was born. I was 9. I remember the hospital, the balloons, Raymond crying real tears for the first time I'd ever seen him cry. I remember Diane holding Spencer like something she'd been promised her whole life and finally received. And I remember, with the kind of clarity that only shows up later, in hindsight, like a photograph developing in a dark room, I remember the exact week the family photos on the mantle started to change. Mine came down, his went up. Nobody said anything. Nobody had to. By the time I was 10, there was a folding chair. It lived by the kitchen door, gray metal, one leg slightly bent so it wobbled if you shifted your weight. Every family dinner, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Spencer's birthdays, which were celebrated like state occasions, there were 5 real chairs at the table and 1 folding chair for me. Nobody assigned it to me out loud. It was just always there, already positioned, like the house itself had decided where I belonged before anyone walked in the room. That same year, I heard my father tell his brother the truth in the garage while they thought I was asleep upstairs. "She's Diane's," he said, "not mine." I don't think he meant for it to land the way it did. I don't think he thought about it landing at all. But I was 10, sitting at the top of the stairs in socked feet, and I understood something that night that took me another 24 years to fully act on. I was a guest in that house. I had always been a guest. I would always be a guest. The only question left was how long I'd keep showing up for a dinner where my seat wobbled. At 18, the money stopped. Not gradually, not with a conversation. I got a graduation card, a generic one, the kind with a cartoon owl on it, from the drugstore rack, and inside it was a $40 bill and 4 words in Diane's handwriting: "You'll land on your feet." I did. I framed houses for 6 years before I ever sat behind a desk. 80-hour weeks, steel-toed boots, a supervisor named Gus who taught me to read blueprints on cigarette breaks because I asked him to, and he was the first adult in my life who didn't seem to need anything from me in return. I studied structural engineering texts at night on a mattress on the floor of a studio apartment in Kessler Falls, and at 27, with $11,000 in savings and a loan from a credit union that almost said no, I started Bright Frame Homes, net zero modular housing. Nobody wanted it in 2019. Everybody wants it now. By 34, Bright Frame Homes had 110 employees, 3 regional offices, an evaluation I didn't say out loud at family functions because I'd learned the hard way that success in front of the Albrights didn't read as pride. It read as a threat. And every year, every single year, like some kind of penance I hadn't been asked to pay but paid anyway, I sent them something. A Christmas basket the first year. A furnace the year theirs died. Quietly, through a contractor, no card, no mention. Braces for Spencer's kid, my nephew, technically, though nobody ever called him that in front of me. I kept hoping that somewhere in all that giving, someone would finally say the 4 words I'd been waiting to hear since I was 10 years old on a staircase in socked feet. Sit here. You belong. Nobody ever did. Then the invitation came for Raymond's 65th. Cream cardstock, calligraphy. The Albright family requests the pleasure of your company. And somewhere between reading that invitation and RSVPing yes, an idea arrived that felt, for the first time in years, like relief instead of grief. Lawn Lake. Raymond had wanted the Lawn Lake house since before I was adopted. A stone and cedar place on the North Shore, built in the 50s. The kind of house you drive past as a kid and tell yourself you'll own one day. He'd point it out on every family drive to the lake for as long as I could remember. That's the one, he'd say. That's the one I should have bought before the market went crazy. He never had the money. It stayed a fantasy, a running joke, a thing he mentioned at every birthday like clockwork. It went up for sale in April. $4 million through a listing agent named Carol Denny at Whitmore and Lang Realty. I found out because I'd set a standing alert on it 11 years earlier. Half sentiment, half habit. The same way you keep checking on an old scar. I called my lawyer the same afternoon. Marcus Webb had handled Bright Frame Homes contracts for 9 years by then. A careful, precise man who'd been practicing property and estate law for over 20. You want to buy it for him? He asked when I explained. Outright, no strings? For both of them, I said. Raymond and Diane. I want their names on the deed. I want to give it to him at the party. Marcus was quiet for a second. The kind of quiet I should have paid more attention to. Sophie, I've drafted your trust documents. I know what this family has cost you. Are you sure this is the gift you want to make? I told him yes. I told him I was sure. I was not, in hindsight, being honest with either of us. We structured it through my foundation, the Bright Frame Foundation, which up to that point had mostly funded transitional housing grants in 3 counties. For tax reasons, Marcus said, though I think we both knew it was also so I wouldn't have to watch the wire transfer leave my personal account like a goodbye. The purchase closed in 3 weeks. Carol Denny handled the walkthrough. A structural inspector named Devin Okafor signed off on the foundation and roof. The deed was drawn up with Raymond and Diane Albright listed as grantees, effective the Saturday of the party. A surprise transfer I planned to reveal over dessert, like the ending of a movie I'd been writing my whole life. Then, Brenda called. Brenda was Raymond's younger sister, the only Albright who'd ever treated me like a person instead of a project. She used to sneak me a second helping of dessert when Diane wasn't looking. She was the one who called me on my actual birthday, not just Spencer's. She sent me a screenshot from the family group chat 2 days before the party. I read it standing in my kitchen at 9:40 p.m. with a glass of water halfway to my mouth, and I remember the water going warm in my hand because I forgot to drink it for almost 10 minutes. Spencer, is the charity case actually coming? Lol, Diane. Be nice. She's good for the photos. Spencer, she's not in the will, right? Raymond, don't worry. I'll make it official Saturday. I read it 3 times. Each time, some new detail surfaced. The LOL after charity case, like it was a joke he expected everyone to laugh at. The word photos, like I was a prop. And Raymond's answer, casual as a weather update, confirming to his son that I'd be formally erased from his estate at his own birthday party, the same party where I was planning to hand him a $4 million house. My hands were shaking by the third read, not dramatically, just a fine, constant tremor, the kind you get from adrenaline with nowhere to go. I called Marcus Webb again. It was almost 10 at night. Take their names off the deed, I said. Give it to the foundation instead, permanently. I want it turned into transitional housing for kids who age out of foster care with nothing. I paused. Kids like me at 18. There was a silence on the line, and then Marcus said, quiet and steady, I can have the amended deed ready by tomorrow afternoon. But Sophie, once this is recorded, it's irreversible. Are you certain? I had never been more certain of anything. We signed and recorded the amended deed Saturday morning, before the party, before the toast, before Raymond had even put on his tuxedo jacket. Elaine Cho, a notary public who'd worked out of the same downtown office for 14 years, notarized the transfer at 8:47 a.m. in a strip mall office that smelled like burnt coffee. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. I remember her asking if I was alright because my hand wasn't quite steady on the signature line, and I told her I was fine, which was mostly true. Marcus filed it with the Kessler County Recorder's Office at 9:03 a.m. A clerk named Patricia Nguyen stamped it, logged it, and handed back a receipt that I folded into quarters and slid into the zip pocket of my purse, next to a printed copy of the recorded deed itself. By 9:30, Lawn Lake belonged permanently and irrevocably to the Bright Frame Foundation. Raymond and Diane Albright's names had never once appeared on the final document. It had gone from an idea I'd carried for 11 years into a fully executed legal reality in about 6 hours, and nobody at the party that night had any idea. I arrived at 4. Diane's caterer had already set the room. Round tables draped in cream linen, a 3-tier cake with Raymond's name in gold script, a slideshow looping on a projector screen showing 65 years of a life that, in every photo from the last 24 of them, had somehow managed not to include me. At the check-in table, there was a place card with my name on it, just Sophie. No last name. Every other card had a full name. Spencer and Melissa Albright, Diane Albright, Brenda Albright Chu. Mine sat there like a name tag at a conference for someone the organizers had forgotten to fully register. And by the kitchen door, waiting, already positioned before I'd even walked in, the folding chair. Gray metal, one leg slightly bent, 18 years, and it still wobbled. I sat in it anyway. I told myself I was there for the house reveal, not for them. I told myself the folding chair didn't mean anything anymore, that I was 34 years old and ran a company with 110 employees and didn't need a chair to tell me who I was. I told myself a lot of things that night, sitting against the wall with a plate of cake I couldn't eat, watching Spencer's toast run 12 minutes longer than it needed to, listening to Diane laugh at every one of Raymond's jokes like she was still auditioning for a part she'd already won decades ago. Then Raymond stood, tapped his glass with a fork, and the room turned toward him the way rooms do for the person paying for the open bar. He talked about hard work he'd never actually done. The business had been his father's, inherited, not built. He toasted Spencer as the future of this family. He thanked Diane for 30 years of standing by me, which struck me, even in that moment, as an odd thing to thank a spouse for, like loyalty was a favor rather than a marriage. Then he found me at the edge of the room. "I'd be remiss," he said, "if I didn't say a word about Sophie." I felt every cell in my body go still. "We were redoing the will," he said, grinning at his own timing, "and I had to think about whether Sophie was even in it. No hard feelings, sweetheart. Wink. You're not really mine. I just forgot to cross you out." The laugh came fast. Easy. A woman near the window said it was so Raymond. Crystal clinked somewhere near the bar. Spencer was laughing loud enough that I could hear it over the rest of the room. And Diane wasn't laughing exactly, but she wasn't stopping it either. She had the particular stillness of someone enjoying a thing she'd never admit to enjoying. I stood up. I remember the sound the folding chair made scraping against the parquet floor, a thin metallic screech that cut through the laughter mid-syllable. I picked it up. I don't fully know why, except that some part of me needed my hands to be doing something, needed a physical action to match the decision I'd already made without quite realizing it, and I carried it to the wall and leaned it there, upright, deliberate, like I was returning a rental. The laughter died somewhere around the third table. I walked toward the head table. Heels on parquet, 60 pairs of eyes following me, a silence in the room so complete I could hear the ice shifting in someone's drink 4 tables away. I reached my father, and I pulled the folded printout of the recorded deed from my purse, and I smoothed it flat on the tablecloth directly in front of his cake. 3 weeks ago, I bought Lawn Lake, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I was going to put both your names on it tonight, as a gift, someone gasped. I think it was Brenda. A man near the front, a developer named Grant Okonkwo Reyes, who I'd met once at a Chamber of Commerce dinner, said, "Wait, Sophie Fowler? You built the Hartwell development." Recognition rippled outward from him, table to table, the way it does when a room realizes the person they'd underestimated all evening is somebody else entirely. Raymond's smile flickered, just at the edges, the way ice does right before it cracks. He could have stopped there. A smarter man would have. He didn't. "But I don't come for a name," I said, before he could speak. "I came to give one away." Then I tore the deed in half, and again. The pieces fell across his birthday cake, landing in the buttercream like confetti nobody had asked for. "That was just a copy," I said, into the silence that followed. "The original was signed at 8:47 this morning, notarized by Elaine Cho, recorded with Kessler County at 9:03. It's done. Lawn Lake belongs to my foundation now. It's becoming transitional housing for kids who age out of foster care with nothing." Raymond's hands were shaking as he gathered the torn scraps off the frosting, trying, absurdly, to piece them back together on the tablecloth like a man solving a puzzle that had already been solved against him. I watched him find the line where his name should have been. I watched him read the name that was actually printed there instead, the Bright Frame Foundation, in the same careful serif font Marcus Webb's office used on every document I'd ever signed. The color went out of his face by degrees, not all at once. First his cheeks, then his jaw, until he was the same gray as the stone facade of the house he'd just lost without ever having it. I picked up one torn scrap of paper off the cake, closed my hand around it, and looked at him for what I already knew would be the last time in a room like this. "You told everyone who I am to you tonight," I said, "so I'm going to believe you." I turned toward the door. "Keep the pieces." I already kept the part that mattered. I didn't stay to watch what happened after. Brenda told me later, over coffee at a diner 3 towns over, that Diane had tried to laugh it off. "Oh, Sophie's always been dramatic." But nobody in that room was laughing anymore. Grant Okonkwo Reyes, the developer, had already pulled up the county property records on his phone before I'd even reached the parking lot. By Monday morning, it wasn't a rumor. It was public record. Marcus Webb sent me the finalized foundation paperwork the following week. Exhibit A through F, he called it, half joking, because after 30 years in estate law, he still found the theatrics of my family faintly unbelievable. Priya Nair, the CPA who handles Bright Frame's books, ran the numbers on the transitional housing conversion. 6 units, capacity for 14 residents at a time, a partnership with the county's Department of Family and Children's Services already in motion by the time the first frost hit Lawn Lake that November. Diane called me twice in the 2 weeks after the party. I didn't answer either time. Spencer sent one text, "That was messed up, you know," which I found almost funny, given the group chat Brenda had shown me, though I didn't bother explaining that to him. Raymond never called at all. I saw a therapist for the first time that fall. Dr. Lena Ostrowski, licensed clinical psychologist, 17 years in practice. An office 2 floors above a dry cleaner's that smelled faintly of steam and starch. I told her about the folding chair, about the staircase when I was 10, about every basket and furnace and set of braces I'd sent that house over the years, hoping each one would be the gift that finally made someone say, "Sit here, you belong." "You already had a seat," she told me, near the end of our 3rd session. "You just kept trying to earn one at a table that was never going to make room. I think about that more than I expected to. Lawn Lake opened its doors to its first residents the following June. 4 teenagers, all aged out of the foster system in Kessler County with nowhere to go, each given a room, a bed, a caseworker, and something none of us ever had at that age. A door that locked from the inside, and a chair at the table that was theirs, permanently, with their name on it, and nobody's permission required. I visited on opening day, stood in the kitchen, a real kitchen, granite counters, 6 chairs around a farmhouse table Devin Okafor's crew had refinished from the original oak floors pulled out during the renovation. 6 real chairs, not one of them folded. A girl named Marisol, 17, asked me why I'd done it. I told her the short version. She looked at me for a long moment, the way people do when they're deciding whether to trust a stranger with something true. So he just said that, she said, in front of everybody. He did. And you didn't yell or anything. You just tore up the paper. I didn't need to yell, I said. The truth did that part for me. She nodded slowly, like she was filing that away for later, the way I once filed away a conversation overheard from the top of a staircase, 24 years before I finally knew what to do with it.